This is going to be the craziest travel story you've ever heard, and there's a lesson in it that will greatly benefit you and your own career. But first, if you're new here, my name is Andrew Pandenberg. I am a professional goalkeeper for Carolina Core FC in MLS Next Pro. It's my job and my mission to help young goalkeepers like you develop the mindset, skill set, and habits to dominate on the field and get to your next level. If you get any value out of this video, like, subscribe, share. The bigger we build this community, the better it'll be for both of us, and it'll be a win-win for both of us. So do that. Back in 2019, I played USL 2 for the Flint City Bucks in Flint, Michigan. I've talked about this summer on some of my other videos, but there's a story from that summer I haven't talked about yet. It was a good summer for me. I played a lot of games. It was a pretty crazy season, just a lot of ups and downs, and we ended up barely squeaking our way into the playoffs. The playoffs were pretty crazy. I talked about one of the games in one of my other videos. We were away in Iowa and we were down 3-2 in overtime, and our backup goalkeeper scores a goal to tie the game, and we go and win in penalties. But ultimately made it to the semifinal, and we hosted the semifinal in Flint, and we ended up winning. And leading up to that game that week, my college coach had been reaching out to me saying that all the guys at Wake were already back. They all get back pretty early just to some do summer school, and they just want to get the team together as early as possible before preseason. And I was the only one who wasn't back yet because I was still playing USL 2. He wanted me to get back as soon as I could, even though we had the USL 2 final the next week. We hosted again in Flint. So after that semifinal game, I go and talk to the coaches, the Flint coaches, and ask them if it's cool if I go back for the week to see my teammates, train, be around them, and then come back for the final, if they would fly me back for that final game. They ended up saying, yeah, that's cool. And so my dad actually flew in for that semifinal game. So I had drove up to get to Flint at the beginning of the summer. So my dad came with me and we drove all the way back home, 10 hours from Flint to Charlotte. I drove up to Wake and spent the week there hanging out with the guys, training and just being with them. So the final was on a Saturday. I went back to Charlotte and just spent the day with my family. And then my dad took me to the airport. My flight was Friday evening, and I was gonna get to Flint that night, go to sleep, get ready for the game the next day. And so he ends up taking me to the airport, drops me off, we say goodbye, and I'm ready to go get to my flight. And I walk into the Charlotte airport, and the line to security is the longest I have ever seen in my life in any airport anywhere. And wherever this line is at, I know just with how much time I have, I'm not making my flight. There's no shot. And I'm standing there in the line trying to even figure out why the security line was so long. Turned out someone had told me that there was some big Boy Scouts camp in West Virginia, and then for some reason they're all flying out of the Charlotte airport to get back to wherever they came from. But there's a whole line of Boy Scouts in front of me, and that's why the security line is so long. So I'm moving up the line, freaking out. I can already tell I'm gonna miss my flight. I get through security, I run to my gate, and turns out my flight was delayed. So I actually didn't miss my flight, and I'm just like, oh, thank God. So I was flying from Charlotte to Chicago and then Chicago to Flint. I realized that since my flight is delayed from Charlotte to Chicago, I might miss my flight from Chicago to Flint. So I was a little worried on that end. So get on the flight, fly to Chicago, run to the new gate, the connecting gate for the flight from Chicago to Flint, and turns out that flight is delayed too. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Didn't miss either flight. This is amazing. I sit at the gate, hang out, waiting for the flight to start boarding. I'm on FaceTime, just hanging out, enjoying, just kind of getting my mind right for the next day. And around this time, I think the flight might have been at 10 o'clock or something pretty late. And then it just kept getting delayed and delayed for some reason. We ended up boarding at like 11:30, even like midnight, something like that, crazy late. They finally call my group number, and so I get my ticket, go up, hand it to the lady, she scans it, and the system dings. And so she tells me, hey, just step over to the side for a second. I was like, okay, whatever. Wasn't really thinking too much about it. Everyone else goes in front of me. They all scan their tickets, and then she goes and she shuts the door. And I'm like, wait, hold up. I told her, I was like, whoa, what's going on? She told me, oh, well, since your last flight was delayed, the system kicked you off this flight because it thought you weren't going to make it. So we'll just get you on the next flight in the morning. And I'm like, no. Listen, I've got the biggest game of my life tomorrow, soccer game, and I got to get to Flint tonight. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, there's no space on the flight. Like, we can't. And I'm over here, like, freaking out. Plane's already, like, driving away, about to take off, and they won't let me on this flight. So they gave me a hotel to stay in and per diem money for a taxi and like some food for the next day. I go to the cab. I get picked up by a cab. Mind you, at this point, it's like 12:30, 1 in the morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm texting the owner from the Bucks, and it's also, again, like midnight, and I tell him like what's going on, and he's like, are you still good to play for tomorrow? I'm like, dude, of course. But inside, I'm kind of freaking out. So get to the hotel. At this point, I'm like, my brain's in a whole nother universe. I'm just can't even believe what's happening. Feels like the Twilight Zone. I'm like, just, I don't even know, doing random stuff. I'm like just taking random pictures in the hotel mirror just because I'm just trying to like remember this moment. I end up going to bed at like 1:30, 2 a.m. My flight the next morning is at like 7 a.m. So I got to be at the airport at like 5:30. So I wake up at like 5. Probably slept about like 3 hours. Mind you, again, this is like the biggest game of my life so far, and I'm getting 3 hours of sleep. I get in the cab, go to the airport, and I'm at the airport and I'm freaking out. Like I said, 3 hours of sleep. Not really sure what kind of food I'm going to eat, what the day is going to look like. I feel like on game days, I like to have a lot of control over the things I do, and this is the complete opposite. Zero control. And so I'm on the phone with my dad, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, look, no one's going to care that you only slept 3 hours. No one's going to know, and they shouldn't care. And he's like, you're going to have a job to do tonight. And again, no one's going to care or know that you slept so little and you've had this crazy journey to get there. All that's going to matter is that you help the team win the game and get the result. And that kind of hit me because I had always been someone who was so afraid of not being able to do the things that I need to do before the game, my pregame routine and all these little things. And I was just like, you know what? He's right. And I got to do whatever it takes to win this game. So I get on the flight at like 7 a.m., get to Flint around like 9 o'clock, 10 a.m., something like that. Someone picks me up from the airport. I go and just grab some food somewhere and just get breakfast and lunch too, and save the lunch just so I can eat it later. And we go back to the apartments. And so I go to my room that was my room for the year, but all my stuff is gone because I drove it home. It's just like one of those blue pads that you have in like a college dorm room, and it's just like a bed frame and the blue pad. And so I end up like grabbing a blanket from one of the couches and a pillow and just like sleep the rest of the day, all the way up until like 7 o'clock kickoff. The apartments were really close to the stadium, so literally set an alarm, wake up, eat the food that I got, and then walk with the other guys to the stadium for the game. And we end up winning the game 1-0 in overtime on a penalty kick. And man, it was an amazing feeling. That was like the biggest game I ever played in front of. We had about like 7,000 people show up, and just with how crazy of a summer it was and how crazy of a day it was just an amazing moment. We ended up going out and getting food after as a team and with the coaches and stuff, and just having a lot of fun and just joking around and just celebrating it all. But I think for me, the big lesson is that you're going to have times where the travel isn't ideal. You get in super late. You didn't sleep as well as you wanted to. You didn't get to do your pregame routine before the game. You didn't eat exactly the thing that you wanted to eat. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that you get the job done. I think however you can get into that mind state, that getting the result is the most important thing. No one cares what you ate. No one cares how well you slept. No one cares that the travel was crazy. Some games, you're just gonna have to wrap your head around, I gotta do whatever it takes to get the job done. And for me, that game was probably the first time I ever had to think in that light and see it that way and just embrace that. I think in these moments, you really have to trust your training too. It had been a long summer for me. I'd worked really hard, especially with the other goalkeeper on the team. We would stay after training every single day and get extra reps. We'd go to the gym for a couple hours in the afternoon, and we basically did nothing all summer, just other than train and go to the gym. I think it would have been a shame if I would have let all those hours go to waste just because in my head I didn't get to do everything I needed to do to be ready for that game just on the day. So I think your training should be so structured and pushing you and getting the most out of you that when there are hiccups like this going to the game and maybe you don't get to get all these little details right that usually help you feel comfortable before the game. I think for me in that moment, it was nice and comforting to know that I'd been putting in the work for the days before, the weeks before, the months before. So I knew anything could have happened on that day. I could have slept zero. I could have ate nothing or ate horrible. And I still knew I would have found a way to play really well in that game because I had such a belief in myself and a belief in the training that I had put in up to that moment. So have your pregame routines, have all the things that you love to do on game days and the day before game day, but make sure that your training is so strong, so structured, so well preparing you that when you get into those moments, you know that you've already put in the work. It doesn't matter about the travel. It doesn't matter about the little hiccups that happen because it's going to happen. Trust me. You're going to have trips that you go and your bus breaks down and you're now late to this and you don't get to do your full pregame routine at the stadium. But mentally, you're in a place so strong that you trust yourself and trust your training so well that it doesn't even matter. You've already won in your head and you know that what you're about to do on the field is just letting the results show from what you've already done in training. So I hope this video gives you a little inspiration just on making the most of an opportunity despite what's going on around you. And yeah, it was a pretty crazy day for me, especially for how big of a game it was. And I was really proud of myself of being able to just get the result done despite of all that craziness. But yeah, man, make sure that you are putting in the work on a daily basis and know that all these little trivial things that might seem to try to stop you on a game day are nothing compared to the work that you put in and the belief that you have in yourself because of the work that you do and how well you do it. So yeah, I hope this story helps you and talk soon.